GenAI. So hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good. How are you, Brian? Jillian? Good to
Cool. We're super
Well,
excited to have you on the show. How about you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Utkarsh, and yes, Contractor is my last name. I'm a CTO at Aisera, one of the founding members of the team as well.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
can you,
Thank you. Thanks for
can
having
you
me.
tell us a little bit about Aisera and what you do?
Absolutely. You could think of Aisera as a cognitive layer for the enterprise. So we typically work with, all the way from Fortune 50 to Fortune 5,000 customers. We help them transform enterprise work through agentic AI. Uh, Typically, we are not a foundation model company, but what we do use is we use a lot of foundation models, and we are an AI native application layer that essentially helps bring these enterprises build AI experiences for both employees as well as their customers. We have a focus on IT and HR, but we also do as part of our offering we can help with other domains as well. Um, that's what we do.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. I'm a big fan of your company, and one of the things that I found that was curious about it is that one of the things you guys talk about is creating these magical solutions for your customers. I love the idea of combining magical with Gen AI. Can you talk a little bit about some of the solutions you create for your customers?
Absolutely, and I would love to actually show you my screen and just talk through that solution a little bit, so that I can put into perspective how we do what we do and what kind of solution we create. So if you look at my screen, Aisera is this agentic AI orchestration layer that essentially helps our customers with a few things. On the very left hand side, are the various modalities. May it be a phone call, SMS, text, chat, Teams message, Slack channel, etc. Right? Our users, our interactors can talk to us, via any modality. What Aisera does is essentially works with the users where they are, local to whichever mode of operation they'd like to use, and help connect their requests from natural language to either answering a question through an enterprise knowledge base, or creating an orchestration, a multi-step or a single-step orchestration through agentic AI. And if you look at the bottom, those little boxes of IT, HR, those are what we very strongly invest in. Those, we call them domain-specific agents, but they're essentially agents that are extremely well-tuned for that domain. And they understand, what IT is. They understand what kind of ecosystem IT has, what is IT terminology, and what kind of actions and knowledges that IT customers want. And we invest a lot in that, so that our customers can out of the box use these IT and HR experiences and enable those workflows within the organization and not have to rebuild that from scratch. Now, obviously, we are very strong partners with AWS, so we run our stack on AWS, for the questions that we can't answer, we have a way for our customers to actually hand off to a real human, so that the human and the learning feedback comes as well. So this is how we kind of build our solutions. And what we typically do is, within the IT and HR domain, we essentially provide use cases, and I'll give you an example of some use cases. These are some of the use cases here, right? So we think of as these use cases something as simple as an employee wanting access to a software, to as complicated as, hey, I'm a new employee, I just got onboarded, what do I do? And the whole series of actions from there. I'll pause there, Brian.
Yeah, I had one question. So, where do your customers usually come to you in their life cycle, right? So obviously you integrate with a lot of well-known brands here, and connect those agentic flows. But do your customers usually have to adapt to these softwares that you currently have access to, or they are currently using those, and you're just implementing your agentic flows in there? How does that work with your customers usually?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great question, Jalian. So our customers typically come from two places. One is a customer who's just starting out their AI journey, and they want to build out, an enterprise AI solution, and essentially need thought, leadership guidance, some kind of a playbook, right, to adopt enterprise AI. That's where we come in with, these out of the box use cases that you see. So, my IT customer wants to come and say, I have about 70 to 80% of my support tickets, and I heard you mention about support tickets, and I totally relate to you. Right? I have 60 to 70% of my support tickets lying in these 5 categories. People want access to this application. People want to, reset their passwords, or folks want to, add them to a distribution list, right? And if you can automate these 4, I can reduce my help desk by 50%, and that's where we come in as one part. Right, where we can provide them point solutions that they can just readily adopt, import from our agentic library, if you may, and then deploy it to their ecosystem. The other type of customers are customers who are very mature, who have actually invested in building their own GenAI ecosystems, and they want us to use as one of the other tools in their arsenal. So we see them coming from both sides based on the maturity of the customer.
Yeah, definitely great to hear that you're working with customers from different scopes, right? Like you said, Fortune 50 companies all the way to, Fortune 5,000. So kind of cover the gambit there in terms of, maturity and, investment into this space. But it's crazy to see, and just so interesting to see how you can easily get to something that's worthwhile, or a productivity boost to your users. Like you're saying, reset passwords. I'm sure some of our viewers watching probably get some tickets like that and have to, manually do some things there. But having a system that you can just pass all those off to, that's a future I like to see. So,
yeah. So when a customer comes to you and, for example, they want to create these kind of automated solutions, what does it look like for the engagement? And how long does it normally take to go from a POC to a production grade solution?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And let me go back to that slide that I was showing. So typically what happens when a customer wants to onboard, with Aisera, they will, and again, this is based on the maturity of the customer, but, let's say a customer who's AI aware and they have a few AI practices set up in their ecosystem. All they have to do is essentially they have to come in and set up, their integrations with us. So if you look at the box here, which talks about connectors and integrations. So we do provide out-of-the-box integrations to most cloud applications, with a very strong focus, obviously, on IT and HR. But, you can think of Workday, you can think of ServiceNow, you can think of, Dynamics, et cetera, all the, Salesforce, right? And depending on what the customer's technology footprint is, they come in and set up these integrations. And as soon as they set up the integration, it's essentially a matter of doing an OAuth or providing some kind of a system admin access. And once that happens, Aisera essentially has access to their both their data and their APIs, and through that they need to now connect. They need to decide where they want their users to interact with Aisera. So they could either come through Teams or Slack, or even through their own employee portal or what have you, right? Defining the modality is how you interact with the system. Defining the integration is what data are you going to interact with, and then they can choose to either import some of our out-of-the-box workflows right here. So we have a store and of workflows. We've created like about thousands of workflows that they can import, and then all they need to do is essentially hook it up with the systems, and they're good to go. So typically the engagement is it's pretty light. We can get a customer running in about 2 to 4 weeks, and for some of our earlier maybe simpler use cases, they can get up as running as fast as a day, for knowledge management service.
Oh, wow. Did you say as fast as a day?
That's a good turnaround.
It's quite a turnaround. Wow, that's super interesting. Oh, wow. That's awesome. So I understand that you have a demo of this. Is that correct?
I do actually. I do have a demo. And actually, I do want to maybe preface that demo with a little bit of what I'm going to show, so that we can put that into context. So this is a very interesting demo. This is one of our advanced use cases. This is where a customer wants to really build an end-to-end agentic workflow. And I remember the previous speaker talking about that, where multiple systems of agents are interacting with each other with a planner agent that's basically acting as the orchestrator. So think of like a team of agents where there's a manager agent and there are sub-agents, and then these agents are now working in tandem to complete a very complex workflow that would have previously, a year ago, maybe have built through, very painful, manual steps, which is now a completely agentic, LLM-driven workflow is what I'm going to show you right now. And in this use case, we're going to essentially have 4 agents: a Salesforce agent, a ServiceNow agent, an SAP agent, and a Databricks agent talk to each other and deliver a supply chain use case. So let me show you that. I'm going to stop sharing this and bring up my video. Present, share screen.
I think we're seeing something here.
Oh, you are? Okay, perfect. Who's, okay. There you go. Awesome. So as you can see this video, right, what's happening here is, my user came in Teams, and they asked for a delayed shipment. So the first thing that got activated was a Salesforce agent who went to Salesforce, got the purchase orders for that delayed shipment. Once it got all the purchase orders for the delayed shipment, it needed to look up order IDs. Now, this order IDs was not in Salesforce. It was actually in Snowflake. So it went to Snowflake and got those order IDs. And now with those order IDs, it's going to go to SAP and essentially get the supply information, because the user wants to actually restock this shipment, right? Because they're running low on inventory. So they say, okay, can you, restock this shipment? So now it gets the supply information from SAP. And once it has the supply information from SAP, we will actually invoke an email agent to essentially go and restock that supply. And the restocking actually happens in a fourth system, which is ServiceNow right here. So as you can see here, the agent is now going in and basically creating a restocking request in ServiceNow, and then finally sending an email to the supplier saying, hey, I've already created a restocking request. Please let me know. And bam, that's the email right there. Now, what's really interesting about this, it's that, not only the Aisera agent, but there's a 5th agent here, which is actually a route shipping agent, which was built upon, Bedrock, AWS Bedrock. So you can even call AWS Bedrock agents now, because what we understand is that agents are going to be all over the place, right? So you can, and basically get, where exactly is my stocking request right now. And there you go. It basically called an agent that was not even on the Aisera system, but a Bedrock cloud, and got that agent and displayed it. So it's a very complex implementation, but the beauty of it is that this did not require me to create any manual flows. What it required me was to write an LLM prompt, give it access to some tools, SAP, Salesforce, supply chain, and then give it access to an agent that was running on AWS Bedrock, right? And based on, go ahead, Dan.
How do you validate that, though? So if you're saying, that sounds great, right? In concept, hey, do this task for me. I'm just write something, but how do we ensure that it's actually doing the task that we want, right, when we're writing the prompts?
Absolutely. No, that's actually a really great question. So to that very effect, what we did is, see, in the world of AI agents, there's going to be a couple of things that are going to be very important, right? One is absolutely to your point. How do you validate that? Which means, how accurately did the agent takes a series of steps, right? It's no longer like your NLP or, your intent understanding where, you ask a question, you get an answer, right? Mm-hmm. It's a series of steps, and you can get wrong at the 4th step, right? So how do you validate that chain of thought, if you may, right? That's number one. How do you make sure your agents are secure enough, right? So that they don't take actions outside of the scope of action, right? How do you make sure that these agents are repeatable and trustworthy so they do the same actions all the time, right? And then finally, is the experience good? Is it fast enough, right? Or is it taking forever, right? So to that very effect, what we did was, I'm just going to quickly share my screen again. And then right here, what we did was we did a study, and the study essentially involved looking at the current space of agents and seeing where the gaps was, right? So we saw a big gap.
Can you put that full screen? I can't quite.
Sure, absolutely. Is it good?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So we saw like a couple of gaps, right? So one of the gaps was these agents in the world of agentic AI today, there was no real good high quality data set that you could actually validate on, right? Like the industry had a lot of synthetic data sets, but there was no real customer data sets. So that was one gap. The second gap was these agent evaluations, the validations that you said, right, were not holistic, meaning they were over compensated on accuracy and maybe error rate, right? But they were not looking at a multidimensional metric. So what we did is we contributed a data set that actually, what you just saw, had multi-turn conversations and their labeled interactions, and essentially we came up with a metric, right, which is what was presented actually as got accepted at a conference called ICLAIR, International Conference for Learning Representation. It's one of the top 3 conferences for AI, and we presented this in Singapore actually last month. And the whole point of this paper was to establish a benchmark that you need to look at agent validation in a holistic case, and not just that. When you build agents, domain-specific agents that are trained for a specific domain, IT, HR, outperform just domain built on general purpose LLMs, right? And I think that's kind of where the validation comes. I know this is a little bit of a longer answer, but hopefully that.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely it's going to become more important, especially as you integrate with multiple systems and you're saying, you have a manager and multiple individual contributors doing individual tasks. It becomes even more important in those multi-steps to ensure that things are getting done properly. But obviously it sounds like you're definitely on the right track and benchmarking those, and we have some statistics to kind of understand how those tasks are being.
Absolutely. And we have actually open sourced both the code and the data set for these benchmarks on Hugging Face as well as GitHub. So happy to share the link to that later. It's all available, and people can go and benchmark their own agents and validate them, to your point.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be very valuable for our viewers.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to even play with this myself. I mean, I'm excited to read your paper on this.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, great work. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like cost. I mean, what is the cost associated with creating these solutions?
I thought you'd never ask. That is such a critical question. I think one of the things that most enterprises are I wouldn't say getting it wrong, but are not too focused on is that very question. Because what happens in the world of pre-agentic AI, in the world of generative AI, cost was predictable. Meaning, your cost was based on your tokens, which it today still is. But there was an easy line of sight from a question to an answer, right? With agentic AI, the thing is that it really depends on what the user is asking, right? Because your question could be a single step question, or it could be like the one I just showed you, which essentially is 7 or 8 steps of chain of thought. And then there could be errors, which may have the agent iterate and do its work again and again, right? So if you look at just traditionally modeling cost, right, I think it gets exponentially higher in terms of an agentic workflow. And that's what we see, because most of our customers use these agentic workflows. And when the cost to serve for us is that we need to make sure that we can provide them that experience, but also maintain a cost that's realistic, right? So that's why we have invested a lot in building what we call domain-specific or small language models, which are post-trained, right? Either by reinforcement learning or DP or some methodology to be more aware of the domain, so that they take the best possible path. Like it's a traveling salesman problem where you got to go between cities and you got to find the best path to go. It's exactly like that with these agentic systems, that when you got to solve a use case, how do you find the least I guess cost and most optimal way to solve it? And that's most of our focus is there. And obviously working with partners like AWS, right? I think we get access to the most latest models through Bedrock, and that has helped us a lot to scale in our customer base as well.
Wow.
Yeah. Talking about those models, I wanted to ask, I know in the beginning you said, Utkarsh, you're more in, Sarah's definitely more in the agentic AI and integration there. How does your technology, like you just talked about some domain specific LLMs and things like that. How does your technology use the LLMs in the back end? Like, is it easy to switch out? How does that process go when new technologies come out? How do you leverage those and make those changes?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really, really good question. So what we have done is that we have a fundamental hypothesis. We have a fundamental premise, and our premise is that the world is not going to be a single agent system, right? The world is going to be a completely multi-agent system, and there's not going to be one player that's going to be building all the agents, right? So we realize that at the core of our architecture, and the way we are building our architecture is that we don't want to be the one, platform to build all agents, right? I mean, there are, much larger platforms, AWS included, right, that can do it way at scale, right? But what we want to do is we want to provide our customers the ability to use what's great with us, ITHR, and, leverage us to connect to, any other agentic platform that they would like to bring. Because what I'm seeing, so I talk to a lot of CIOs, right? And what I've seen in my role is that, my understanding is that people are very, pro build, and people are very pro buy. And the way the space of the industry is moving is that, there are teams that are actually building agents within organizations that makes total sense to their business, which we could never build because that's very specific to their core business. But there are agents that they don't necessarily want to build because that's not their core business, right? Which is what we build. So we build that interoperability, Brian, Dalian. We also provide, protocols, right? I think we were talking earlier about MCP, right? So we're an MCP native, right? So if there are Bedrock agents exposed via MCP, absolutely go ahead and connect. We don't want to build those agents. We can provide the interface, right? Similarly, we are partners with agency and other protocols that are coming up. So we're building it at the core of our ecosystem. What we're doing is we're building this interoperability so that, we can, what we are really good at is we are really good at orchestration. So, we can provide agents that we natively build that people don't have to build. And then for the rest, we can orchestrate and provide, that line of sight, for the enterprise.
Oh man, that's super awesome. Super awesome. I love how you guys are integrating into all these like ecosystems and specific things. So one other question, like, how do you guys integrate into other AWS services, or do you integrate into AWS services?
Absolutely. I mean, we love AWS. I mean, we use AWS throughout the stack, right? So, for our, search embeddings, vector embeddings from OpenSearch to, our, EC2 instances, our Kubernetes, deployment footprint from the infrastructure to, using, OpenTelemetry with AWS. We use it at the database layer. We use, AWS at many of our core storage services. S3 is, one of our blob stores. So I think from an infrastructure layer to all the way to an agentic layer where, we're using a bunch of SageMaker, tools, to build, machine learning models that, offline. And, obviously Bedrock Agents is first party to us. We want to make sure that we have very strong integration with Bedrock Agents because you guys are launching so many models like, Cloud Core, when, the foundation model providers launch it the next day, it's on Bedrock. So, I don't have to worry about that integration. I'm just going to call an API.
I mean, I think Bedrock kind of helps with that. We're definitely launching a lot of models, but it's good to see that, you can just use one tool to kind of, switch out these different
The other thing that we love also with that we're doing with AWS is we host our, LLM service, part of that on AWS. So we actually, as I was telling, right, we built, we are investing in small language model, domain models. So these domain models are both trained and hosted and exposed via inference, through
AWS. Awesome. So how can our watchers and partners locate you and find out more about what you guys are doing, or how can they contact you on the social media stuff?
Absolutely. Let me quickly just bring up that slide, and I'll just put this in presenter mode. So, you can definitely find out more about the company at www.aisera.com. That should be everything about what we do. Some of the demos that I couldn't show today are there. There's actually a really good sandbox. It's called Aisera Play, play.aisera.com. You can go and actually install an agent, look at some of the things that I just talked about, play with the agent, upload knowledges, do question answering, run an agentic workflow. So it's a really good sandbox to try out what Aisera really feels like, right? And then, if you really want a custom demo or, something more tailored, right, to your organization, then, you can also reach us out on the left-hand side here, and we can schedule some time with you. But the play should give you a good sense of, how our ecosystem looks like. I myself am personally available on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive, so except in the middle of the night, I sleep, try to sleep. But, reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect.
That's awesome.
I know what I'm doing this evening. It's going to be Aisera Plays.
Yeah.
To clear the agenda.
Yeah. I'm going to be reading that paper, man. I'm super excited to read that thing. Wow, this is super awesome. Just to highlight what you guys did. You guys are just building some awesome solutions around agentic flows. You guys are just, a changing market in the way that you do things. And you guys are creating solutions that are super powerful and super fast for customers. We're talking about like less than about a day to go from nothing to like this GenAI solution. So thank you for your innovation into the space.
Thank you for being such great partners.
Karsh, before we wrap it up for today, I just had one last question for yourself so we can leave the viewers. Where do you see, currently, obviously, there's a lot of great things we're doing with Agentic AI. What is the next best thing? What is the thing that's not here yet that you're excited for to come? Maybe by end of year, maybe next week. We'll see.
That is funny. Yeah, no, I mean, I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I think there is one that's a more responsible thing that is absolutely all of us have to do is, as the space of AI and agentic, mostly agentic AI comes in, right? I think AI safety and AI security is going to be paramount. I think that's going to be the next hot problem in AI, because a lot of these agents will now have full control on our behalf to take actions on systems of record that we were very carefully, orchestrating ourselves, right? So making sure that these these models are aligned to our interests, making sure they are safe and secure, and making sure that the data governance and data privacy is protected is going to be paramount. So I think there's a lot of investment both from academia as well as from industry going to be in there. That's the more, I think, responsible side of this thing. But the fun and the cool side of thing of this also is that I think the way I am seeing agentic AI exploding. So from my vantage point, when I talk to many of these companies that are investing in agentic AI, both within and their employee base and customer base, the autonomy is going to be unparalleled. I mean, it's just amazing how these agents are now doing tasks that would take days, if not weeks earlier, and just the level of autonomy that's going to happen. And I think the workforce is going to fundamentally change. It's I heard one of the CIOs mention this to one of their teams, and this is so true, right? It's like AI is not coming for your job. AI is not going to take your job. You're not going to compete with AI. Who you're going to compete is someone who is using AI better than you.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that was like, that hit home with me. So
well said. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of GenAI Live. We're always excited to see partners like you innovating in this space. And I hope you come back someday and tell us about the latest and greatest thing that you guys have built.
I would love to. And thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Great conversation.
Great conversation. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank my co-host Dylan for this exciting conversation and this episode of GenAI Live. Definitely, you can follow us on all the social media stuff, and you can see previous episodes of GenAI Live on Twitch and on LinkedIn. And thank you for joining us for this episode. And you can join us every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I guess that we call this an episode, and we'll kind of put this in a wrap. But we'll definitely see you next week with the next innovations in GenAI with AWS and its partners. So thank you for joining us.